Welcome everybody to the MBS webinar series on sustainability for practical solutions for on-set usage. My name is Dave Fraunces. I'm the Director of Consulting and Training for MBS. Joining me is Jain, who is our Senior Director of Sustainability. Amit, if you would like to take us away.
Sure. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining. I want to thank our panelists as well for taking time out of their day to share, some insights that they've learned. This presentation, this webinar is really about, what we can do right now, right? It's we're not talking about like major planning here in terms of productions. We're just talking about like, here's some quick wins, some opportunities where you can find, some practical solutions that can make you that you can create a business case for and can have a direct impact on the environmental footprint of your production. And a lot of the information data that we're using, I'm pulling it from the Sustainable Production Alliance's 2021 carbon emissions report, where they monitored 161 feature films and 266 TV series from their members, Amazon Studios, Disney, Netflix, amongst many other members of the SPA group. And what they basically were able to sort of glean from all those productions that they monitored using the green production guides, different toolkits that they provide. Tentpole productions, about 3,000, almost 3,400 metric tons per production. And if you can see here, about 72% of that is coming from air travel and fuel. So it kind of paints the picture of where there are some opportunities. And just one of these productions is about the equivalent of like 732 passenger cars on the road in 1 year. I think, and just to give you an idea, here's another look at some of the emissions on different shows. So half-hour scripted dramas. You can see there's like 4 or 5 major inputs into their emissions, but it's just a mix of how they work. So scripted. When our scripted drama, there's different sets that you're going on. There's travel involved. There's probably remote shoot. So you can see the fuel consumption is higher versus some of these other unscripted shows where it's a much smaller production. So the air travel really makes up a big piece of it. But I think the major takeaway from all these different types of productions is, I think we all know that the content machine is not slowing down. And here at MBS, we support more than 400 productions a year. So, if they were all tentpole productions, you're looking at, the equivalent of about 300,000 homes powered in a year from those productions. So that gives you an idea of the impact. And, also through that report from SPA, there's priorities that they've laid out. And a lot of it comes down to what we're seeing here, which is transportation fuel, generator use. They're looking for clean and low carbon solutions, and they want to see more electrification on set as a priority. And so given that, content creation is at an all-time high, and all the majors have made commitments towards reducing their environmental footprint or moving towards carbon neutrality, we thought that this would be a great opportunity to sort of talk about some of those solutions here in a practical way. So that's just the sort of setup for this presentation. I want to maybe now introduce some of our participants, our participants, and I'll start with Nick. Nick, do you want to tell us about yourself and where you work and what you do?
Sure. So my name is Nick de St. Croix. I'm the alternate energy engineer at Valve Manufacturing. Valve Manufacturing does a lot of custom manufacturing. We have 18 to 20% of our workforce is engineering, so we do a lot of custom work. A big part of that custom work are products that we deliver to the film production rental business, including distribution boxes, generators, diesel generators, and recently we gotten into battery powered generators as the industry pushes towards green energy.
Great. Thanks for joining us. Brandon, you want to tell us a little about the company you work for, the nonprofit, I should say?
Sure. Good morning to everybody and happy Monday. My name is Brandon Smith. I'm the Vice President of Business Development at Human IT. We are a nonprofit and a social enterprise that essentially takes in old or unwanted technology of all types, wipes and refurbishes those items, and then repurposes them out to students, low-income families, nonprofits, that type of thing. So we're offsetting environmental offset. We're pulling that away from environment, from landfills, and getting it back out to people that need it.
Awesome. Thank you, Brandon. Chris, do you want to tell us a little bit about EcoSet?
Hi. Yeah, of course. Thanks for having us. My name is Chris Barberg, Executive Director and Partner at EcoSet Consulting. We're a sustainable solutions provider for film and television. We also work in live with events and festivals and basically anywhere there's content creation. We introduce zero waste processes, primarily on set for commercial productions where we're recycling, composting, strategizing, reuse, and donating anything possible that has a next life from the production. The way we tie in with film and television is basically a diversion partner for reusable materials. We have a service called Redirect, where it's a companion to existing disbursement strategies that a show might already have in motion. And we can rehome a large variety, almost anything that's left over from a production, so it doesn't hit a landfill. And we also offer storage clearouts and asset purges when a production is finished.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I'm can't wait to talk to you about that. Caroline, you want to tell us a little bit about your company?
Sure, absolutely. Good morning, everybody. I'm Caroline Vanderlep. I'm the CEO and founder of ReDish. ReDish actually addresses food waste, food packaging waste. We are both a product and a service that replaces all the single-use disposable packaging that you might be using in your food service operations on set. And we replace it with a reusable product and the service to pick it up every day, wash it, sanitize it, and then redeliver it.
Great. And I'm gonna start with you, Caroline, just because
good.
We ended there, so we'll kind of maybe snake back through with everybody on the way back through. You know, have your presentation up. Hopefully, everyone can see my screen. I think you're going to share a little case study on some of the great things that you guys have done in regards to film and television productions.
Absolutely. So this is who we are. We're a woman-owned business, certified. Obviously, I think most of you are on this call because you already understand that we have a serious problem in the world at large, but also across all the productions. And ReDish is a full-service solution to try to address that. Next slide, if you could. Thank you. ReDish supplies reusable containers. They're USA made, BPA free, NSF certified, have all the acronyms attached to it. But essentially, these are reusable containers in multiple sizes. As it turns out, most of our productions use our 6x9 and 5x5 clamshells. But I put this here to show that there's a broad spectrum of packaging to really address any kind of food service need. Operationally, not much changes. Food service, caterers, etc., package the food for the crew and staff as they would normally. Everyone eats as they would normally. The only difference is when everyone's finished, they put it in a ReDish bin instead of a recycle or waste bin. And at the end of the day, we come and we collect them and wash and sanitize and bring them back for reuse. The program is meant to be comparable to what you're already doing, or even in some cases less expensive. It includes, it's one fee for each container that we collect, and it includes everything. It includes inventory on a 2 to 3 times week basis to cover daily needs. We collect all the used containers from site, pack them, etc. We can even provide bins if that's needed, although we found that on production, oftentimes there's already available bins to be used. More importantly, we provide communication and training materials, and we provide real-time metrics to show what's being saved in terms of carbon emissions reduction and waste reduction. And I'll get into that in a moment. So DishTrack is the system in which we track everything. All clients have access to DishTrack, where they can look at all their measurements and, more importantly, communicate it back as a reinforcement to the community. So here's the example that was from last summer, a case study from last summer. There was a 6-week shoot in New York for a movie called The Players, which was on Netflix. And they used 6,111 containers over the course of 6 weeks. That's the equivalent of 355 pounds of disposables that did not go to landfill. Or, you know, in the great EPA comparison, cars taken off the road for a day, 34, given that 428 kilograms of carbon were not emitted as a consequence of this program. A lot of water that was reduced as well. And then we get asked a lot, you know, do you lose a lot of containers and what happens to them? And the reality is that there was a 4% loss over the course of 6 weeks, which we deemed to be very successful. And longer shows would have a lower loss rate. So the longer people are accustomed to being part of a reuse program, the more they actually remember to put it in the right bin and to comply, et cetera. And therefore, these metrics actually go up. So that's the ReDish program. I think there's one follow-up slide. Oh, this is just to see what it looked like on set. So this was a shoot all over New York City, as you can see. You know, you can see how the food is packaged on the picture on the left. This, I'm sure, looks like every location shoot you guys have done, but you can see how the food was packaged, the bins that were available for collection of that, people enjoying the food, et cetera. I think it's safe to say that there has never been any client that we've worked with, either on production, in schools, in corporations where we're very prevalent, that hasn't actually come back and said it's also a better dining experience, because the containers themselves are actually very, very sturdy. They hold heat really well. They don't leak. And they're branded to be able to make the connection between the container and the bin that it goes into.
Carolyn, this is Dave. So you had mentioned when we had our pre-call about silverware. Can you kind of go through that?
Sure. So we don't offer a service for reusable silverware, like because we think it looks like plastic, and most often than not ends up in waste rather than in ReDish. That being said, many of our clients use stainless steel, which we think is the much more preferable solution. And if that's the case, we can also wash that. So we didn't do that on Players. We've introduced that capacity over the last 6 months. And we're happy to work with the set on whatever they want to offer to make it more sustainable.
Great. I have a question from the chat as well, which is this: says, which role manages the bins, i.e. sustainability, locations, et cetera, removes when full sets aside?
So it really depends upon the company, the production, et cetera. It would be the same people that would address the waste. So think of us as just another channel for waste. The difference is, instead of going to landfill, it's going to us and to our back-end infrastructure, where we can wash, sanitize, and put it back into use. So on this particular set, there was an eco coordinator who was responsible for the ReDish bins. In other circumstances, it's been the caterer or the sustainability person on set. So it really varies. It can really be kind of anybody on set who's just charged with making sure that it doesn't go into the waste pile.
And then my last question for you is you talked about your expansion plans and where you currently are and where you're going to be.
Sure. So we are in New York right now. We can support the whole New York metro market from our facility in Brooklyn and from our fleet that moves around Lower Westchester, kind of New York over the bridges, et cetera, and all the boroughs. We are planning to open in LA in the first quarter of 23 for the LA metro area. We've got a couple of other markets slated for towards the end of 23, but those are the two that will be operational in the first quarter of this year.
Great. And we have one more question.
Yeah, I see there's a question there. I can answer that.
Sure.
I think, to be very honest, we sometimes get pushback from the caterers, but very honestly, once they use the program, they embrace it. Because as it turns out, the containers are so sturdy that they're easier to fill. They're easy, you know, they do retain the heat, as I mentioned earlier. So, and it's a better dining experience. So it actually ends up that the caterer gets a lot of the credit for the packaging, which we love.
Yeah, and just sort of wrap it up, I would just add, you know, I think there's a business case here where one, you're creating less waste with the single-use plastics and single-use, you know, dishware for food.
Right.
So you essentially need less, you know, bins or 4-yarders or 3-yarders or 40-yarders. You know, you're essentially less waste. And then I think there's an opportunity there, and I don't want to speak out of turn here a little, Caroline, but I think there's an opportunity where you're actually reducing the cost of the caterer, where there may be an opportunity to reduce your overall catering cost as well. So just some things to think about as we're talking about this. Anything else to add? I mean, we'll do a roundtable after we kind of hit everybody's presentation, and then we can you know, we could talk about some other, maybe some pointed questions. But is there anything else you want to say before?
No, I saw a question about, can this be used for craft service too? And the answer is, of course, it can be used by anybody with any kind of food service. We have container sizes that can fit almost any need, and we'll work very, very specifically with a production based on what their needs are.
Excellent. All right. Let's jump to Chris.
Hello.
Hi.
The voice from the void.
A quick technical thing, Chris. So everyone who's been letting us know that you can't see Chris's wonderful photograph, it's up there. So we've had a little technical difficulty, but it's all under control. But as long as you can hear, you can go through the presentation. So sorry about that, but thank you.
Yeah, this is great. So if you, are you able to enter full screen? Okay, so the service, EcoSet has a lot of services that we provide in our home market of Los Angeles. The one I'll talk about with this example of working with a feature film. So we provide a service called Redirect, which manages either set deck or scenery or surplus reusable materials, basically the whole spectrum of what's left over from a show. And we work alongside the sustainability steward, the construction team, props, anybody that has the mission to keep their surplus materials out of the landfill for the sustainability directives of the show. We can work in tandem as a coordination partner or a direct facilitator. So this example is in Los Angeles, where we have a warehouse. We have part of our warehouse that's a designated donation center. And so we can intake any type of materials, and then they outflow very quickly back into the community. Last May, actually March through 3 months, March through May, we worked with a Netflix feature called The Gray Man. And as they were striking, they partnered with us to make sure that a lot of the surplus, really good construction materials didn't end up in a disposal process. So we had 2 scopes of work with this show. We directly took in trailer loads dropped off to our facility, And then we did a remote coordination scope where we basically matchmaked some large set dressing directly to a partner that could pick up from the filming facility. So I'll get into that in a minute, but we can go to the next slide. So the soundstage, or actually the airplane hangar where they were filming, had a huge amount of surplus construction materials that weren't used. Some of the I-beams that you're seeing were actually used and then deinstalled, so they had nails in them, but we were still able to take them. So the variety of materials we took were I-beams, PVC, a lot of heavy tile, subflooring, OSB subflooring, some really high-end crown molding trim, and then also a constructed structure. And so the total number of loads that we were able to intake at our facility in LA, 16.4 tons, did not have to go into disposal. And so we rehomed all of these materials at our facility. And because these were such quality construction materials, and at the time the prices of lumber were spiking, we found builders and general contractors that picked up a lot of these structural materials. And then gardeners, filmmakers, artists, and individuals are some of the general recipients at our donation center in LA. And you can go to the next slide. So yeah, some of these loads were really heavy. The tempered glass, that load itself that was delivered to us, about 9,000 pounds. And so they were able to just forklift the pallet onto a trailer and deliver to us versus having to do any kind of breakdown strategy to fit into dumpsters. So the process was during the strike days, the construction team loaded 18-foot trailers as well as a stake bed that was towing it. So they basically had 30 feet of bed space that they were able to just directly load and not have to break down. And then a transpo driver that was already on the show would schedule the drop-offs to our facility at their convenience. And then our team would unload the trailers and then start dispersing the materials right away. So everything from palletized items to an actual structure that was built. It didn't get used in the show, but they didn't have to break it down. The mausoleum structure in the middle, we were able to take that fully intact and then donate that straight away.
Where did that go? Just curious, that mausoleum.
It went to a haunted, I don't know if it was a haunted house or it was kind of something that's going to be used all year round at some sort of a haunted entity for the general public. So that's now then, and a reusable asset year over year for the recipient.
Yeah.
And I think they turned it into a photo op. And so what it saved the production was the labor of having to dismantle these things or, carefully fit things into 40-yard containers in order to maximize that load space. And basically what we shaved off for the show, if they had to do this themselves, it took us about 80 labor hours over the course of the several weeks that we were donating these items, but that's built into EcoSet's logistics. And then you can go to the next slide. So here's the large set dressing that we helped to donate, but it never came to our facility. This is something we can do for shows that are outside of Los Angeles as well as help, basically lead generation for recipients that can take these type of items and then pick up directly from the filming site. So there were 42 of these faux boxwood hedges, different sizes, different shapes. Some were double-sided, some were single-sided. And the material that it avoided sending to a landfill being wood, the plastic sheeting, and also the plastic greenery. And so the cost savings to the production, of course, is the breakdown labor. They didn't have to fit these into bite-sized pieces into a dumpster. And then the container cost itself for 40 yards. The recipient picked up directly from the filming site. So that was just a little bit of scheduling that had to be done with the show. And we estimate that it diverted 9.7 tons of waste. And so it only took us 4 hours to find one recipient that could commit to all of them. And that's kind of how our network works. We're very dialed into a lot of different creative entities and artists and festivals. So it just was 4 hours of our time billable, and the recipient is going to use them year over year at outdoor events. And so in summary, from first communications to our final completion of the donation process, it was 3 months. And we just needed to do one site visit to the filming site and meet all the teams. The teams we met with, of course, the sustainability steward was the direct link to get us involved in the project. So we worked side by side. And then the production supervisor and producer had to approve the billing. Transportation captain had to approve the deliveries. And then the construction coordinator had to shape the dismantling process to know which was designated for reuse and which was just straight disposal for the show. We needed photos from set and info about each load that was coming to us, and just a little bit of logistics scheduling with transportation. But we estimate that it's 26 tons or so that we diverted from landfill for this project, and potentially 20 40-yard containers. Not sure how they would have broken down the hedges, but the sheer volume of those easily could have been 20 containers total, including the 5 loads we took in directly. So our total cost to the show was just over $4,000 for our services, and we only bill as worked per load and per hour coordinated. And then you can just go to the next slide. That's my contact info. We do have a variety of services beyond the materials diversion. And so you can reach out to me if you have any other questions.
And Chris, do you want to tell us the locations where you operate in?
Yeah, so obviously based in LA. We do commercial shoots in New York, not to the scale of LA because we don't have a facility there, but we do zero waste on set. Very excited to use ReDish because we're the team that's sorting, every single bag that's disposed on set. We would be able to capture all the containers if they ended up in any of the bins. And then the next market we're looking at would be Atlanta.
Great.
We have a question as well from the chat. It says, do you have a sustainable lockup spaces that are shared by all productions?
We do have a bit of storage, like asset storage in Los Angeles. But I guess I'm not sure if I'm here. Our donation center is called the Materials Oasis, and that's where any production can come and get free materials that we were hired to divert.
Interesting.
Great, Chris. Yeah, and I'd point this out as well. It's not just the cost of having the 40-yarders there, but it's also the space that a 40-yarder takes up. And you always have materials around that maybe can't fit in there or supposed to go in. And so, by diverting this and working ahead of the production with EcoSet, you're giving yourself, a little bit more fluidity with your operation, as well as the cost savings. So thank you.
Yeah, and Chris, one thing I'll add too is I can tell is like it probably matters how soon you get contacted by a production. So is there a preferred timeline for you?
Yeah, I mean, if we can get the initial billing discussions and site visit and preliminary lists of materials, if we can get that a month before the strike, the success rate goes up of what we can actually help divert. And we're working in tandem with their existing donation process. They're doing the same thing, but we're able to take a larger variety of materials that maybe the coordinators on the show aren't able to find homes for.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Chris. So I've already pulled it up to get you ready, Nick. So you want to take us through Valid?
Sure. Yeah, thanks for inviting me. So Valid Manufacturing, as I mentioned, one of the things that we build are portable diesel generators. We started with tier 2 and most recently built a large number of tier 3 generators, and we are now starting to build tier 4 generators. So we, as part of providing equipment to the film industry, specifically diesel generators, we, with 3.5 years ago, we started developing battery based generators for the same market. We started off with small generators, 4 kilowatt output with 10 kilowatt hour capacity. We added a 12 kilowatt output with 20 kilowatt hour and 40 kilowatt hour capacities. And as part of that development, we added remote monitoring to all of those battery-based power systems. As part of that remote monitoring, we saw what a great tool it was for both our customers and ourselves for troubleshooting. So we added that remote monitoring to the generators and started collecting data from those generators. And what we found over time was that on the film sets, typically 80% of the time, only less than 30 kilowatts of power was being used by the generator. So we thought, well, wouldn't it be a great opportunity if we could come up with a battery system that could handle that 30 kilowatt load, eliminate emissions and fuel consumption and noise levels. So we developed a 30 kilowatt system with 100 kilowatt hour capacity, and that system connects to our new Tier 4 generator and will automatically start the Tier 4 generator under certain conditions. So one of those conditions is when the battery gets down to a certain state of charge capacity, it will, and that is a configurable number. So, the user can configure what level they want the generator to start recharging the battery. So it will recharge the battery, and at the same time, it will seamlessly take over the load of the power system. So the generators at that point then managing the load and charging the battery. So it's working much more efficiently. It's not in that low, inefficient 20% load area. And then if the load starts getting larger than the 30 kilowatts, then of course let's say the battery is providing the load and the load starts approaching 30 kilowatts. At that time, it will also start the generator and kick the load over to the generator. And if there's excess power from the generator, then it will use that power to charge up the batteries. And then once the load starts approaching the limit of the generator, then the battery charging will reduce accordingly. And at the point where the load matches the generator, then the battery system will switch from charging to inverting, and the output will couple with the generator. So at that point, if our Tier 4 generator is a 100 kilowatt output unit, the inverter is 30 kilowatt output. So under those conditions, you'd have 130 kilowatt output. And as part of that development, thought, okay, well, there are going to be lots of situations where, or a number of situations where, film production is going to want more power. So what we've also done is set the battery generator up so that you can connect up to 4 of the battery systems in series together and connect, the end one to the generator so that you have up to 120 kilowatts of output power from the battery system and 400 kilowatts hour capacity. And a single Tier 4 generator can charge all of those batteries at the same time while providing, remainder whatever load there is, because the batteries systems will reduce their charging requirements based on the available power from the generator and the requirements from the load. So and all these systems, of course, have the remote monitoring capability, and we make all of that data that we collect available to our users so they can download it in CSV format and do all the analysis on that as well. So in this graph here, we show.
Can I interrupt for 1 second, Nick?
Sure.
Hey, one quick question for you. For people like me that are kind of neophytes about this, can you explain the tier system?
Okay, so the tier system is just basically the efficiency, emissions efficiency of the generators. So there's another slide. Actually, if you go to the next, we'll start with this one. So this is fuel consumption comparison. That we show the tier 4 as being slightly better fuel efficient, but the reality is that's only because it's only a 100 kilowatt inverter. So the engine, the generator is smaller. It takes less power to turn it over. So between the tier 3 and the tier 4, the fuel consumption is fairly consistent, but you get your fuel savings when you add the battery system. And as I mentioned before, the loads are on average, a large percentage of it is less than the 20%. So if we go down to the next slide, so here we're starting to show the carbon dioxide emission comparison, which again, there's not a big difference in the tier 3 to tier 4 until you add the battery system. But if the real difference is in the next page where we show the particulate comparison. So here we've actually added the tier 2 generator as well. So these are just the particulate matter, how much difference between the tier 2, 3, and tier 4. Tier 4 is negligible. And then if you go down to the nitrous oxides, you get the again, negligible outputs of the nitrous oxide and HC emissions between the tier 3 and tier 4 generators.
That's actually astounding. I mean, without, I guess, getting too into the science of it, I mean, how are you able to reduce the particulate emissions? So
yeah, I'm not the generator guy, so that technology, I think what they do is there are systems that burn off those emissions before they're released into the atmosphere. So there's there's afterburning that's done on the exhaust. It's more efficient engines, of course, but the exhaust is treated before it's released into the atmosphere.
Got it.
I think that's where you're allowed to able to reduce all that sort of stuff.
Oh, great.
So just a little bit on valve manufacturing. We're based in the interior of BC, British Columbia, Canada, but we were able to ship across North America. Of course, we've primarily been shipping in Canada, but we've just recently started shipping in the US. The tier 4 generator and the 100 kilowatt hour capacity battery system, we are just starting to go into production of those. So we have a demonstration unit of each of those that we're making available for people to play with them and get comfortable, because there's a reluctance with the new technology battery systems. How reliable are they? So we're making those available for people to evaluate. As I said, our first production units are going to be going out on the market in July.
And Nick, do you want to tell everyone what you supply to MBS Equipment Services in Canada?
So we have sold MBS in Canada. We sold them 6 10-kilowatt systems, and those are our systems. 10 kilowatt hour capacity with a 4-kilowatt inverter, and those are small units that you can actually push around the site. We've also sold 6 20-kilowatt units, 20-kilowatt hour units with a 12-kilowatt inverter, and those are on a power cart, so you can wheel, just drive them around the site, and they'll actually go up a 16-degree incline. And then we have sold 4 of the 100 kilowatt hour, 30 kilowatt battery systems, and we're just in negotiations now, I believe, in terms of the tier 4 generator for that. So price wise, right now in US dollars, I think the tier 4 generators in the neighborhood of 129,000, and the 100 kilowatt hour, 30 kilowatt capacity battery is in the $132,000 US range. And that's without trailer. And we also make custom trailers. So if you want to put both of those units together on a trailer, we build custom trailers. That's just one of the other things that we do. But we do have our standard trailers as well.
Great. Thank you.
So we have a fair amount of questions coming in pretty quickly here. The first one is, what is a particulate?
So this is just a part of what the emissions that come out of the generators, and in terms of pollutants that the governments measure in terms of what they're trying to regulate is basically nitrous oxide, HC, and hydrocarbons, and particulates. So I couldn't tell you offhand the specifics on that, because as I've mentioned, I'm not the generator guy, but
Sure.
I can certainly get that information and send it out.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in layman's terms, I mean, it's just, the tailpipe emissions, the actual material that's coming out of those emissions. In California, we have, Air Resources Board, which heavily tries to regulate those types of things that come out to make sure that the air is clean for all of us. So that's essentially what the particulates are, those specific compounds that are coming out. We're just measuring those and making sure that the bad ones aren't there.
Yeah, and I briefly mentioned the reduction in noise. I know the productions do a lot of filming in residential areas where drives people nuts, the generators. So this is where another reason that the battery systems are quite popular, because they don't make any noise.
We have this question, which is, can the diesel generators use renewable diesel instead of fossil diesel?
I can get back to you on that. I believe so, but I would need to confirm with our generator guys.
Yeah. So, I think when we talk about each region, whether it's Canada, the US, or the UK, they have different definitions on what they call renewable diesel. They may call it HVO, hydrogenated vegetable oil. But essentially, most of MBS fleet is you can put a drop-in biodiesel in there, and you don't have to do any retrofit. It won't do any damage. It doesn't void the warranty. For the most part, I would just check with your representative on that to make sure. But most of our fleet, I believe, has a drop-in ready biodiesel option there. It's just a matter if it's available in your region. Yeah.
Okay. One of the other questions was about lease terms, which is something. Would you like us to follow that up with an email or something later, Nick?
Yeah.
Or
Yep, we can do that for sure.
Okay. And then the last one I have here says, what about hydrogen generators, which are already available, as well as green hydrogen fuel in Europe? Is hybrid technology not a bit outdated?
Again, you're asking the battery guy. we have looked at hydrogen, but we found that the one of the biggest issues with hydrogen is just the delivery of it to the site and storage of it for these systems. But it's not to say that you can't. There's nothing to say that we couldn't develop hydrogen generators, but at the moment, then we're starting to look at them. But at the moment, the biggest issue is just storage of hydrogen and delivery of hydrogen to the sites.
And I think that the other thing that we're doing with the entire webinar is trying to give everyone an idea about the regionality of this.
Yeah.
Is that certain things are available in certain places and they're not available in other places, and that it's where you're doing your productions is different as well. Each state, each city, each country has their own sort of different standards and things like that. And so we're just trying to give you an idea of what's happening out there as the lay of the land. But,
yeah.
Maybe
And going back to the hydrogen component, I know that there are some mobile hydrogen generator OEMs that are looking to get something commercial ready. As far as I know, like there's just the application for film and television, there's no commercial ready product yet, but hopefully when there is, MBS will have it and make it readily available. And just to close up, Nick, on just the business case for your perspective, I know on remote shoots, you mentioned in the urban setting where you have these quieter generators, but on a remote shoot, it tends to be even more critical that it's quiet. It requires less cables. It doesn't have to be as far away from the actual scene. So it's, reducing manpower, reducing noise, reducing the amount of equipment needed to make it to service it. So, I think in that case, it can pay for itself, right?
Yeah, and in fact that the 100 kilowatt hour battery system basically is your junction box. You connect it to the generator, but then from there you can go to wherever. So yeah, it's you're not connecting to the generator anymore, you're connecting to the battery system. So you do have one cable run to the battery system, but from there you can distribute accordingly. And yeah, so
Awesome.
Yep.
Great. Brandon, I know you've been...
just one last point, technical point, that the battery system will handle up to 400 amp. It's 3-phase, 208 volt. It'll handle up to 400 amps per leg, so a total of 144 kilowatts of power can go through that unit. And it's not specific just to the tier 4 generator. Any generator that you can hook it up to any generator with 3-phase power, but if you add the auto start, like a 2-wire auto start, it will it'll start up the generator that way as well. And lastly, we haven't added this yet to the large battery pack, but the smaller battery packs can all be charged with EV chargers.
Okay, good to know. Good to know. All right, Brandon, I know you've been patiently waiting there. I'm going to pull up your presentation here and you can take us through it.
Actually, Amit, if you want to come back to that at the very end,
okay,
I'm going to go
no problem.
Thank you. Yeah. It's really unique what we offer, and I like to let the conversation kind of guide it. And there's undoubtedly going to be some good questions. So we'll kind of start there. But, typically they always say start with the why, right? So I'm really in the realm of e-waste, e-waste being the largest growing waste stream in the world. We generate around 50 million tons of it every year. That is the equivalent of throwing away 1,000 laptops every single second. Regrettably and unfortunately, 85% of e-waste in the US ends up in a landfill. It does not get refurbished, reused, or properly recycled. So again, 1,000 laptops every second, only 15% of that reused. And at the same time, you have 1 out of 5 kids here in the US that don't have a home internet connection or computer. So it was really highlighted with COVID and the digital divide, as it's known as, that folks were at a lack of access, both adults, you have veterans, you have students, obviously, that can no longer connect to the internet or have a device of their own. So really it's an issue of allocation, not a one of supply. You have the largest growing waste stream on one hand. On the other hand, you have students, veterans, families, single mothers that lack digital access. And that's really where Human IT comes in. Human IT, we are headquartered here in LA. We have a facility in Detroit, and then we work nationwide, whether that's boots on the ground anywhere, it's shipping devices, it's whatever it takes. And then we have international mission aligned partners that we could do for international services as well. As far as the volume of e-waste, we do about 250,000 pounds, 250,000 pounds of e-waste every single month. If you want to think about what that looks like, that's over 50 truckloads of e-waste that we're seeing through one of the 2 facilities. And we'll really integrate with production houses, their partners, their affiliates, at all points, right? So it's production, it's post-production, it's the house itself. It doesn't necessarily matter. We're really there to be that, hopefully that goodwill of e-waste, if you will, where we could take that in and give it a second life. We are really agnostic to industry. At the end of the day, the more tech we take in, the more we can get back out there. So it's really, we're looking to empower the folks that maybe see the walkie-talkies at the end of the set and saying, what are we going to do with these? Very similar to EcoSets, it's about giving things a second life and getting them back out there. As far as case studies, something that we've done before, a company that we worked with actually was MBS. We did a tech drive with you guys back in April during Earth Month.
You want me to pull it up?
Oh yeah, pull it up. Yeah, please. And this is actually the carbon offset environmental impact that had come from that donation drive. So it was a week-long drive. We had done it with, it was employee-facing, it was internal tech. And as you see right there, 3,462 pounds diverted out of landfills. Similar there, 7 cars off of the road. On the left side, you'll see more of the environmental impact. On the right side, you'll see the social. So you're really there to double dip as far as helping folks, helping the planet and diverting them away from landfills, diverting them away from shredders, dumping them overseas, and looking to give them a second life, primarily domestically, but we work internationally as well.
Brandon, you want to tell us like the things that you take back, just to give it like a range of different, people can understand?
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's crazy. We say anything with a cord outside of appliances. So we don't want that break room microwave per se, but anything else that can and should be used again, we're looking to do that. So a good relationship that we have is with a lot of the folks at Warner Brothers, working with them, everything from the on-site lighting to AV to the walkie-talkies, to working out of the lot, right? And even doing, HBO, or it was probably right at the beginning of COVID there, there's 11,000 employee office in New York City. So we were there taking everything from the phones on desks to the TVs in conference rooms and everything in between. And also going to the lot at Warner Brothers, and they had a data center of 150 server racks. These things are 1,000 pound each. You got wiring into the ceiling, they're bolted to the ground, and we're able to go out there and again, get boots on the ground if it's needed to help collect, uninstall, palletize, and ship them out. Even with that same relationship with Warner, right? You have AT&T as the parent company. So we just did a campaign with them. If you guys watched the NBA finals, it was dunking for digital inclusion. So every slam dunk in the finals, revenue went toward digital inclusion and to Human IT so we could continue to put devices, internet connections, training programs, and support out to the community. And then we do personal donations as well. Most of the people on this in the room today, probably have a cell phone in a drawer at home or a laptop in the garage, that type of thing. So when we take in the items, we're looking to bring them in, wipe, refurbish them, and then give them a second life and get it back out there.
That's great. Do you want to, I guess, should we remind everybody like why it's important to keep electronic waste out of the landfill?
Yeah, if you go on YouTube, you could see it in pretty quick of just exactly what that looks like. That's very harrowing if you've never done it. Maybe you've come across it on social media, but it's hazardous materials, right? So typically what happens is items are dismantled and broken down into everything from the green board to the plastics to the metals domestically. Some of those items can be reused again, especially the gold on those green boards, but not everybody wants everything. So a lot of that, to that question, ends up going overseas and ends up in parts of Africa, Southeast Asia. And within those devices, those old CRT TVs, right, they've got mercury, lead, other toxic chemicals that essentially the only way to get into that device to get the good stuff is to crack it open. And that bad stuff does leak into the ground and into the groundwater and can poison entire communities. So, you could imagine, and again, if you go on YouTube, you could see just these piles of electronic waste where Often it's even children that are hand picking through these sharp piles of metal looking for the good stuff. And again, we're kind of passing our problem overseas, which is unfortunate, especially considering here in the US, again, 1 out of 5 kids don't have a computer. Well, why are we grinding the stuff up in the first place? That's fine for the items that can't be reused, but why put it on this truck that drives through a low-income community where there's a 3rd grader that can't do her homework? Why don't we give that as a device that can and should be used again? Maybe it doesn't work for the production house. Maybe it's not going to help you with your next, design on an animated movie, but absolutely should that help kid with basic homework? Absolutely.
Yeah. And tell us where you can service or operate.
So yeah, we have 2 facilities that we produce out of. In the Southern California, we are in East LA area. So we're able to actually physically pick up ourselves. And then same thing with the greater Detroit area. So anywhere outside of that, whether it's, hey, Brandon, I've got 5 pallets on a dock in New York City, or I need boots in the ground in Wichita to actually collect this stuff, or hey, I've just got 2 Gaylords full of stuff, I'm sending it your way. It's very simple for us. Send a web form in, we'll expect it, and then we'll be able to essentially attach your name to the assets coming in. With those items, we'll wipe them to HIPAA, DoD, and NIST thresholds. We wipe hard drives for Visa. We do banks, law offices, hospitals, UCLA Health, organizations that need that high level of data security, and then provide documentation on the back end, which you'll see with that impact, or you saw with that impact report earlier. We also give make, model, serial, item type, quantity of everything that came in. So you have that for your records, not only for your own peace of mind of what went out the door, but it's also tax deductible. So that's a great thing to hand over to accounting. Not only are you not spending a lot, if anything, to donate, you're also able to write these things off.
Yeah, I think that, that's the business case right there, is that, it's a tax exemption, it's cost savings in terms of waste. It's minimal in terms of your, cost to you to have you guys come out. And when we did this e-waste drive here on Media Campus, I mean, this was open to all production. So this wasn't just from the operational side of MBS, but this was all the productions on site contributed to diverting the e-waste here. So great.
And if I could echo that, yeah, I mean, really coming back to cost, right? So I'll say this, there is no cost to donate. Again, no cost to donate. We're not asking for folks to jeopardize business sense in order to do social and environmental good. So you could really have your cake and eat it too, where, again, we're not charging you to donate whatsoever. And then you're able to write it off, you're able to do good. It's a win for everybody involved. So we do at no cost provide the corporate grade data wiping I mentioned earlier, the itemized tax deductible receipts, as I mentioned earlier. The only time that costs will come in is when it comes down to logistics, additional services, additional reporting, those type of thing, if you want us to facilitate that.
Yeah, and I think, so maybe we can pivot here, kind of have a little bit more of a roundtable discussion. So I think, I think what we're hearing with a lot of the folks here is that it makes sense to plan the production in advance, like what you're going to do with your waste, what you're going to do with your catering, what you're going to do with your electronics, obviously what you're going to do in terms of sourcing for power. Maybe Brandon, do you want to start there? Maybe talk about, how working in advance can have a more efficient outcome.
Sure. Yeah, we're absolutely, first and foremost respectful of your timelines. You are going to be at much tighter timelines than we are. And we've gotten pretty good at being reactive because, the unknown, expect the unknown, essentially. So that is our biggest obstacle as it comes down to logistics and timing, right? Different needs at different locations under different circumstances. So really, what can work best, if we could plan ahead, we know it's coming. Again, we could worry about 11,000 employees out of Manhattan. We could plan for something of that magnitude. On the other end, if it's, hey, we need to be out tomorrow, and if you have a bin, just send it to us, right? You've got other destinations for other items, right? So it's something that could just go straight to human IT. Again, we'll record it and do the wiping, provide the impact reporting and documentation on the back end. But that's probably the biggest thing, is just logistics and timing and making sure that the more when we have, the better, but we don't need it at the same time. A second part I would say was really just another obstacle is recognizing the right items that can be reused again and how to uphold the condition of them, right? So you got to think about when you're on set, you're not always in the best circumstances. The weather might not cooperate, right? Those types of things. The the idea is that that laptop sitting in front of you that you'd like to donate is going to end up in a kid's backpack one day. So we work with you there to how can we get it good logistically to where it's being shipped in the right way, it's the right items. You know, if it's a broken light bulb, that's not probably going to help anybody. So maybe hold on to that type of thing. But that's something that we work with as well. And I could send out info after, just our accepted items that really spans the full scope of what we take in. And, you know, really with the whole idea of giving these things a second life and getting them back out there.
Yeah, I think what you said there is important, as like, you know, the mindset of we're not treating this as waste. We're treating this as something that can be used later, right? So it just means we just treat it a little bit better. You know, we're just thinking ahead of making sure that, you know, maybe sometimes you think, okay, well, if it breaks, it breaks. Like just thinking that, okay, let's just try to maintain this as much as possible. And what I'll do is I'll share your one sheet in the chat so people can see what types of things you guys do. Chris, do you want to answer that same question, like working in advance of productions?
Oh yeah, absolutely. If we can tie into a production's existing labor budget and their existing transportation schedule, then our costs are a lot lower. And so as much as we can, you know, be the last resort, that's going to be to everybody's benefit. And so a lot of shows are already doing their donation scope. And, you know, they've got trucks that are scheduled to deliver things. We can be one of the drop-offs in LA. If we're needed for coordination, advanced planning, if we can get lists and photos and scope and just a general idea of what's available, we can get started basically in any market, doing lead generation and trying to find partners that can commit to what's available and actually provide their own logistics to pick up, and hopefully loading labor. It's harder with nonprofits and schools. They don't always have stake beds and box trucks and, you know, lots of labor on board. So then if we can, if the existing labor on the show can kind of meet in the middle and load their trucks or even deliver, that's all the better. But a lot of that takes just that extra step of coordination and time and planning.
Yeah. And have you seen that that's been like productions that you've worked with, they've sort of understood this now, and this is sort of like now the way of, you know, working with you and trying to divert waste?
Yeah, I mean, we get a first list that's not always the final list, and that's fine. We're so flexible and adaptable. It's like you think you're giving us 5 semi-loads, it ends up being 2. That's fine too. You know, if that's LA, because in our home market, we can take anything almost at any point in the disposal or the strike process. And it doesn't really matter what it is. We have flat rates for our loads. If we pick up, whether it's a trailer or a box truck, we've got flat rate pricing on our website. ecoset.la/redirect is where those rate sheets are. It's a little different. It's more hourly coordination if we don't have the logistics in a certain market. But yeah, it's the flexibility that we have. We can deal with any remnants that are left over after the show has done their best. We can do the rest.
Great. Carolyn, I know for you, it's kind of the same thing where, I mean, obviously you're working with catering, you're working with the production well in advance to sort of plan out. But I wanted to pivot and ask you a different question. I wanted to ask you, like, what are the obstacles that you face when trying to get in and work with productions or work with catering? Like, you know, what are the things that you hear that are, you know, that you have to overcome?
Well, I'd like to go back and just answer the other question if I could, because sure. I think everybody on this call, you know, tries to be as flexible as possible because we've all got, you know, the greater good or impact, you know, in mind. We got that Netflix Players production up and running in 4 days. So we didn't have a lot of advance notice. We like to have a little bit more notice simply because we want to ensure that we've got the inventory that the production needs and that we can handle the logistics. But we don't need that much time. So I just, I'll put it out there that we can move pretty quickly. Obstacles. I think, you know, one of the challenges was raised earlier, which is the catering company or the craft services or whatever, you know, whatever the food service provider is, if they haven't worked with us before, their immediate reaction is you're going to change our operating processes and make it more complicated for us. The reality is that that's not the case. And they have to really work with us the first time, literally for the first couple of days, to appreciate, that worry is not one that they should have. So that becomes one. I think that the other is we don't pick up from the location shoots because obviously, on location, the shoot one day could end at 3 o'clock in the morning, and the next day could end at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So we do need to work with a constant delivery place and a constant pickup place, or some kind of mechanism to get the containers returned to us if indeed it's going to move on a day in, day out basis. And we have found that the productions who want to ensure that they add this sustainability component to their production have been really very clever in the way they've addressed it, and have all found ways to work with us on it. So
That's great.
I think that those are the two biggest.
Okay. Nick, more of like a logistical question for you. So, say a production or, Jenny Op he's never worked with your technology. Is there some sort of training they have to go through?
There isn't, I design equipment, so I don't think there's a whole lot of training really that's required. There's a user interface but it's basically just turning the unit on, connecting it up, and when you want to output, you just hit the inverter button and the unit will output. Otherwise, you just plug the generator in and plug in the auto start connection, and away you go. There is a user manual, and we are doing a training session with MBS up in Vancouver for your customers at the beginning of August. So that that is available. We can do that, but the systems are pretty straightforward to use. It's the inputs and outputs are very similar to the generators, and it just plug it in and away you go. The only difference, of course, is with the generator you had fuel, and with the battery system you plug in power to charge it up.
Okay. And I guess another question for you, Nick, is you're obviously operating, and it sounds like things are going well in Canada. What's been your barrier to enter the US market, or has there been one?
There really hasn't been. We just we've basically with this latest product, we're just getting into production. I think it's just the issue will just be meeting the demand, because there will be at the moment we're looking at a 4 to 6 months delivery from time of order, just because of all the supply chain issues that we're having right now. In terms, there's some questions about what certifications are required in the US, and we do a certification here in Canada, and really it's up to the end, the end user what certifications they are comfortable with. For those that are looking for specific certifications, we are in the process of getting the specific UL certifications for this equipment. So that's in the works, but we do what is called a SPE 1000 certification. It's a production level certification with Intertech right now. So all of our units have that certification before they go out the door. So it's really what your jurisdiction requires in terms of certifications, and I think for this particular equipment at this point there aren't a lot of specific requirements in terms of that certification.
Yeah, I mean, I know that anything with emissions in California has is very strictly regulated by air resources, all the different boards that handle that here. So it's there's all sorts of permits and things have to get in has to be done in advance of that.
Yeah, and
So-
that's really why we're moving to tier 4. We don't
Yeah.
produce any tier 3 generators anymore. We're basically moving on to tier 4 generators.
That's great. Well, I think we're coming towards the end here. I wanted to give all our panelists just maybe a minute to talk about, if there's anything that they wanted to say in particular. But I wanted to appreciate everyone's time, people that generated questions here. I think we had some really good discussion. Hopefully everybody learned something new. I think we seeing it from 4 different perspectives, which is great to see. And hopefully, you're seeing some services that can be provided to your productions. From an MBS perspective, I mean, we work with all these folks, pretty much on a regular basis. So, and I know Caroline's supporting some productions of ours in New York. Chris, I've seen her truck here at Media Campus, and I know she works with Television City. Brandon, we just did the drive, and hopefully can do drives at our other studio locations. And then Nick is doing a great job working with MBS Canada. So maybe I'll start with Nick, if there's anything lastly you would like to say.
Yeah, the only thing I'd like to say is check out our website. One thing that I didn't talk a lot about is remote monitoring capabilities. So there's information about that on our website. And of course, any questions that you have, feel free to contact us. I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. Brandon, any final words?
Yeah, really bringing it back around that I think that everybody could envision, specifically to technology, the idea of it getting it back out there and living a second life, as I say. We're really that entity to help make that possible. We're trying to have it hit that triple bottom line impact of let's have it make business sense, let's help people, and let's help planet at the same time. So it really does check all those boxes where you're not sacrificing one for the other. We're really that empowering entity. It's like, do what you do well and continue to do that. Let's make that easy for you to do good. And we will do the reporting, we'll do the wiping, we'll do the logistics, those types of things. So essentially those assets can empower us in such a big way to help empower other people, and obviously bring that back to you and your organizations to give you that warm and fuzzy feeling at the end of the day that, hey, I'm helping people on the planet, and I get to do that within the course of my job, which is pretty cool. So
it is cool. Caroline, any last words?
I guess just to remind everybody that we're reusing dishware every day when we go into a restaurant, and we're very accustomed to doing it. And there's no reason why we can't apply it in other situations. We've just, in the last 40 years, we've just kind of moved away from the whole idea of reuse. But I think with the direct correlation between waste and climate change, it becomes really just very, very critical that we take the simple solutions, which is really what ReDish is, and apply them, because they can have quite significant impact. I think the other piece I would just emphasize is that, in just replacing your single-use packaging for food, which seems very small, you're reminding all of your constituents that you believe in sustainability. It's an everyday reminder, and it actually creates this muscle memory and this education process that people can then apply, and we know do apply in other parts of their life as well. So it has kind of a cascading effect, which we think is really, really important, as we try to address climate change as a group. So thank you.
Very well said. Thank you, Caroline. Chris.
Yeah, I want to thank you both for leading this discussion, but also plant the seed about EcoSet's donation center in Los Angeles for student filmmakers and indies and low budget productions. Obviously, it's a treasure trove, but we're also available for budgeted shows. Set dressers and shoppers do come by and tag a lot of items before they start their shopping process. So we really want to promote the circular economy aspect of assets moving and flowing and saving budgets. No matter the size of the budget, the materials are available for free.
Great.
Yeah, can I just add one thing too, which is sort of what Caroline was saying, which is that what we wanted to do with this is give you guys an idea out there in the world, what's available and what's coming. May not be available to you in your market at the moment or where you're doing shows, but at least you know now there are some resources available. And I think to Carolyn's point, which I think is really important as a former producer, is I always wanted the crews to be part of this. You know, they're all very much interested in doing this most of the time, and all we have to do is give them a little bit of help, and they will. And the example I use was, you know, how long it took us all to adjust to having recycling bins on set. Not very long. You know what I mean? So, you know, we used to have plastic water bottles. Now we have metal water bottles. The crews will respond if we give them the resources to do it. So that was my point on it. But
Yeah, that's great, Dave. I guess that's it. I mean, I you know, we can go ahead and sign off. This will be available on YouTube later, or maybe soon. I don't know when Dave will put it up. But thanks for everybody that attended. Thanks to our participants for contributing. You could, if you need to get in touch with them, please reach out to me or Dave. But I think, you know, the contact information should be in the chat here. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
Bye, everybody.